Okay, for the people that did make it today, thank you so much for showing up to another lovely State of the Reactor. Um, we're grateful that you're here. And before we get started, I think we want to just do another quick little high-level run through of V2 stuff. So with that, maybe I'll turn it over to Carson. You want to start?
Yeah, sure thing. So just to give everyone, in case there's some people that haven't seen V2, kind of a quick high-level overview. Tokemak V2 consists of two user-facing products. So one is Autopilot, which is for Ethereum holders looking to optimize their yield. The second is a liquidity marketplace that's really for DAOs and DEXs to use, and we'll get into briefly kind of what builds these things up and what makes them work. So all of these, both these products are built at its core on top of something we call the LMP, the Liquidity Management Pool, which is a building block that's configured with specific assets. For example, specific LSTs like SWETH, STETH, etc., and then specific venues, so pools on DEXs, so SWETH, ETH on Balancer, examples like that. Built on top of a specific LMP, one of these pools, then the Autopilot is basically an allocator to that pool that's optimizing the yield across all the assets, and the DEXs, the venues that are available to an LMP. So for the user, for the Ethereum holder, they no longer need to monitor yields, hop between pools, anything like that. It's really abstracts away the complexity, and it becomes a very simple exercise of just supplying the assets and letting the rebalancing logic take care of all of the liquidity allocation and dynamic exposure to the underlying. So to kind of summarize all of that, the easiest way probably to think about this is the LMP is really under the hood. Within a specific LMP, you can Tokemak has configured the what and the where. So the what would be a different set of LSTs, for example, STETH, RETH, etc. That would be the what. The where are DEXs like Maverick, Balancer, Curve, over which it can be optimized. And then the Autopilot is the how. So it's how it's being rebalanced and generating yield. So last kind of two pieces here are, once you kind of understand the Autopilot, which is optimizing the yield for the Ethereum holders, that specific Autopilot is able to discover a liquidity rate, basically a market rate that's discovered by a specific LMP. And that becomes sort of a rate or a floor rate for the liquidity marketplace, which is the kind of last product here. You can think of the liquidity rate as being the summation over the staking rate, the pool fees, and the incentives in the pool. And what that enables is the second product I mentioned, which the DAOs and DEXs use, called the liquidity marketplace. So in that product, DAOs, and this will launch after the initial Autopilot, this will be where DAOs can rent liquidity in real time at a transparent rate and remove sort of the guesswork that usually goes into incentives for generating liquidity, and they can pay exclusively for allocated liquidity. So that gives you kind of a high-level overview. Just to summarize, LMPs that enable the two products, Autopilot and the liquidity marketplace, and the way those two things are joined together is that the Autopilot discovers the liquidity rate that the liquidity marketplace uses, and where DAOs can rent liquidity. I'll maybe pause it there and see if anyone else on the team wants to chime in with more.
Yeah, I'll actually mention one of our last Twitter spaces with Maverick and Bob, which is one of the core contributors at Maverick. He had something very interesting to say with regard to the Autopilot and Tokemak V2 as a whole. And it's quite similar to the way that I've been thinking about this, which is the trade aggregation space is already extremely mature. With solutions like, for example, 1inch. However, what we are doing here is really pioneering this new category, which is focused on liquidity aggregation. And just building on what Carson said, the Autopilot doesn't simply look at the maximum APR, right? So as we mentioned before, this takes into account several inputs, and it takes into account the different types of yield. So the base yield, trading fees, and incentives. It takes into account the underlying LST backing to really understand versus the exchange rate, if it's trading at a premium or a discount. It takes into account slippage, liquidity constraints, etc. So the analytics team really did a great job here, and we're very proud of our rebalancing logic. And then in addition to that, focusing just a little bit more on the liquidity marketplace, the user experience that DAO will be offered with the liquidity marketplace, it's still similar to what you would expect on an incentives/bribing market, meaning that a DAO is able to essentially select a pool, right, destination, just deposit the incentives, which are paid according to our liquidity rates, and then the autopilot just prioritizes this and deploys that liquidity to one of the available destinations on a given liquidity management pool. And what we aim to accomplish with this, it's offering additional liquidity management solutions that are not possible with current gateway systems. So for example, if a DAO right now wants to adjust liquidity, and in the case of LSTs, that can be due to a larger exit queue, or for example, on-chain liquidations, they are not able to use a current gauge rate system because you need to wait for the next voting round. In addition to that, you need to wait for the gauge rate to be enacted, and then you need to wait for third-party LPs to move according to those incentives. So it's really guesswork because the amount of liquidity depth that you get, it's unknown. Using the liquidity marketplace, you have a more deterministic control over this liquidity, and in addition to that, in quasi real time. So yeah, we're really excited about the product, and I would emphasize what Bob said on that call, which is pioneering the liquidity aggregation space. And we have a lot of options with regard to what you can do with LMPs. So I think about LMPs more as a new primitive, right? And you can think about LMPs that just rebalance you across STETH, if that's the LST that you want to hold, meaning that you don't need to select, for example, a pool on Curve or Balancer on Maverick. You just say, I want to have exposure to STETH, and you're rebalanced optimally across all of these pools. Or even if you just want to LP on Maverick and you want to have exposure to ETH, all of these things are possible, and we'll see all the use cases that also the community requests for the autopilot. Yeah, I think that's a good overview.
Sweet. Thank you, Sharp. And with that, I'll kind of go into the rest of the call. So today we're going to discuss some timeline updates, namely how predictably as we move forward in the building process, some of the elements of the smart contracts, which are then handed off to Halborn for audits, that sort of stuff provides like an ever increasing fidelity on when we can actually estimate like an accurate date for launch. But before we get into that, which I'll pass it over to Craig for that, I'm going to quickly discuss what's going on with our awareness campaign, which is going to continue to ramp up as the weeks go by. So the Zeely sprint is underway and doing quite well. We currently have nearly 8,000 quests claimed or completed with about 650-ish participants. And I would say that despite some of the memes being kind of hilarious for the wrong reasons, there have been some valiant efforts on social, some decent memes and threads. So as more information and content from our side gets disseminated, that's going to allow for more Zeely quests and like new tweets and new meme creation ideas. And we're going to be working on adding some additional quests in the next week or so to keep that moving along. So we're grateful for everyone's participation. If there are people in the audience that participated, it's been a real help to get some boost in social presence, and we expect that to continue and to improve in quality as we get closer to launch. We'll also be releasing some cool autopilot images early next week for people to start using for memes or PFPs or anything really. And we're probably going to create some Zeely quest ideas utilizing those. So be on the lookout for that. We've been stepping up our Twitter presence a bit. We're kind of taking an organic approach during this phase of pre-launch through these Twitter spaces that we've been doing with relevant DEXs and LST projects. We recently had a Twitter spaces that had over 1,500 people in it, which was cool. And we anticipate that sort of rise in activity to continue or trend upwards, at least in the coming weeks, including more spaces and threads and memes from our end. As we get closer to launch, we'll also be hosting our own spaces, not just joining spaces with these other friendlies in the space, but having our own that kind of focus specifically on the products that we're launching. And on that note, we do actually have a Twitter Spaces on Sunday this weekend, which we haven't formally announced yet, I don't think. But the second that I get I'm actually not sure if the Twitter Spaces link is ready, but in either later today or tomorrow, I'll make an announcement in the announcements channel. But Sharp or Bruno, do you guys want to give a little intro as to what that space is about?
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about that. The spaces, it's with Maverick. So one of the destinations that we are integrating. We're really excited to be collaborating with them, especially because their AMM, it's a special purpose AMM that is perfect for LSTs, right? And they are starting to get a lot of traction from LST protocols that want to use Maverick. So I think that it's a very synergistic way to explore all the ways that we are working together with Maverick. And everyone should tune in to understand really the where that Carson just mentioned.
Sweet. And I will announce that with the link to the spaces the second we have that. And we also encourage everyone to take a listen to the previous spaces, which I believe are probably found in the social channel. But we can go dig those out again and make them somewhere more prominent.
They are also available on our Twitter feed. Yeah. And both of them were great, but particularly the first one was really interesting because it was Tokemak, Maverick, and Swell. So the way that the Twitter Spaces was organized, it was also pretty cool, which was starting with Swell, so on basically the asset layer, right? Because Swell is one of the LSTs that we're going to include. Then you had the intro to Maverick, which is the DEX layer, so the where. And then the how is Tokemak acting as the liquidity aggregator that deploys assets into destinations. So for example, Swift in Maverick. So I'll definitely incentivize people to take a look at that one. It had almost 2K people, and it's a great way to have an overview of the 3 projects and how all of this fits together in terms of money Legos, where Tokemak sits on top.
Cool. Next, we're in the early stages right now of getting the Gitbook documentation ready with some tutorials similar to how we kind of redid our Gitbook a few months ago with some like animated GIFs and stuff. And we're aiming to release that before the launch. I know sometimes historically, like our docs have come kind of like after launch, and we've edited them periodically over time, but we're trying to get everything ready so that it's prepped prior to launch so people can familiarize themselves with everything. And as we get closer, we expect more DAO or LST project friendlies to contribute to sharing some comms. And we're also looking into, some crypto native publications to give us a boost. But we'll keep everybody updated on that. We also have a fun little launch campaign for the OGs and new entrants into the LMP1. Some of you may have seen a sneak peek as to what that may be if you've been clever enough to discover some of the sneaky stuff that's hidden somewhere. I don't want to go into too much detail yet because not that many people have found it, but we'll release more info about that as we get closer, unless it sort of like leaks, and in which case we'll give some details about it to the Discord community. So in summary, there's a lot more to come, and we're excited for everything to continue to build up as we get closer, including freshening up the Discord a little bit with some new stickers and stuff, and this cool little bot that DJ and Dan built, which we're going to integrate soon. And yeah, so that's a little summary update. And with that, maybe I'll turn it over to Craig for some timeline updates.
Sure. Thank you, and before we get into the timeline, I want to double down a little bit on our thanks to all the memes that have been coming through. They have provided tremendous entertainment to the team. The ones that people spent a little more time on, and even the ones that people did not spend time on. So keep them coming for our benefit, as well as filling the timeline with hopefully continued quality content. One thing to reinforce the value of the Zeely campaign and what you all are putting out there is we spoke with a partner this week or the last week, and they had said it feels like their Twitter timeline is full of Tokemak, which is nice to hear, and I think they're pretty excited about what we're building and excited to see the community's enthusiasm around that too.
I actually have a slightly contrarian opinion, Craig, which is the weirder and more abstract memes have been my favorite. Like, we're all used to the same meme templates. The ones that are really cracking me up are the ones that we're getting in submissions that I'll never expect. So yeah, also good work on those.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to call those creative. Let's see. Getting into timeline, we have some very exciting things to share. So since we all last were together, we hit a very significant milestone. We passed off contracts to Halborn for audit. The pieces that went over to Halborn, that was a couple of weeks ago, were our pricing contracts. And those contracts will undergo a traditional audit that will take about 4 weeks, and we'll have the final audit report there. And then the other piece that went off to Halborn was our high-level LMP vault structure specification. And that's really interesting. That's going to get, while they don't have the actual code, they are beginning a review, and they're performing and building a formal verification on top of that specification. Formal verification is probably better explained by the devs themselves, but from the non-dev point of view, they're a way to use kind of formal proofs to test the contracts themselves in a mathematically provable way. And they can be a pretty valuable part of an overall security review portfolio. So that's pretty exciting. That should also take about 4 weeks. In the meantime, the team is heads down building and wrapping up the final pieces of the system. They're doing a lot of great work. There are details that need to be completed that everybody's working through, and we're just really excited to see this amazing team build what is truly a new, innovative paradigm, we think, for the space. So it's becoming more real. We think that the final handoff of the complete set of contracts for the first phase of the autopilot should be able to be handed off the first full week of July 7th. And that will start Halborn's review on that piece of the system. In parallel, we'll run a crowd audit through Sherlock. Sherlock gives us both a crowd competition, kind of like Code Arena, and in combination with a more traditional audit, where they identify top tier reviewers and put them on our contracts along with the crowd. So that will run in parallel, and we'll also run formal verification on the rebalancer part of our system. A lot of the timing around that is out of our hands. I think kind of we think about the review plus the fixes plus the fix review to be about 2 months. And that probably takes us into kind of the early part of September for launch. We'll keep you guys posted as we get into those audits and then out of the main part of the audit. And we should have more fidelity in when we would be thinking about an actual launch. So tremendous amount of work. Let's not forget our interface team on the front end. We pushed out our landing page to the public since we last spoke. It's, I think my personal opinion is it looks amazing and delivers on our value prop in a very thank every team.
I think that we are losing you, Craig, or maybe it's just me.
No, we lost you a little bit there, Craig.
Let's maybe give them 30 seconds to see if it comes back.
Over. All right. Well, I apologize if you missed that.
I think we got you again, Craig. Maybe you can, maybe you can just recap the last 1 minute, maybe, if you can remember.
All right. I apologize for that, folks. I think the last bit. Did we hear the transition into the front end update?
Yeah, we heard that.
Okay. Then I'll just wrap that up and summarize. Front end team's doing great work. User testing underway and getting feedback from that team for that team, and we'll keep you posted and hopefully get some of the folks in this community on a call to give us some feedback along the way.
Yeah, and this is also a good opportunity to thank some people present on the call that helped us out with the user testing, and it really helped developing a kick-ass front end.
Yeah, and I'll wrap the update up there.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I think that's kind of all we had on the agenda today. Was there anything else anybody on the team wanted to talk about? Sam, was there something you wanted to mention? I don't know if that was.
Yeah, I think I might have left Sam off here. So we did think it would be interesting for folks on this call to hear a little bit of the insight into some of these final pieces that are coming together. And Sam and the analytics team are the ones focused on the rebalancer strategy, which is kind of the magic behind the LP at the moment. Why don't we turn it over to you, Sam, for a quick update, if that works?
Yep. So as Craig alluded, we've been focused pretty exclusively on the rebalancing strategy, and more specifically improving basically the decision making of it to enhance performance for LPs. Some of the improvements that have gone in already are we've created a system that directly connects slippage, which is basically value decay for the LMP, to the expected incremental return. By doing that, we improve the overall quality of rebalancing by requiring slippage to be recovered within a certain amount of time. So that's a pretty big improvement. We've also improved how the system forecasts expected return. That's kind of related to how do we forecast to understand how long it will take to recover slippage. And so this enhances or reduces kind of our chance of making bad decisions. So a few things we've done are we've reduced the noise for variable sources of yield. Think like trading fees, which can be pretty spiky. It could be 0%, then 1%, and kind of all over the place. And so we've implemented a model that helps smooth that out so that we are less reactive to kind of spikes in those. And then for incentives, which make up a large part of some of the returns, we take into account the duration of the incentive program and the volatility of the incentive token itself. So these all kind of go toward making sure that when we choose to rebalance from one position to another, our degree of certainty in making back that slippage or the cost of doing that is high, and so that we kind of do our best or have the LP do its best to generate outsized returns. And then I just did want to give a call out. So a lot of the credit for this work goes to Ahuja, who I think is on the call, but maybe not on stage. He's been working with Tokemak for a little over a year, or maybe more than a year, but he joined full time about a month ago and has been making a big impact on the analytics side. And that is it for that update.
Yeah,
Connor,
sorry.
he's raising his hand. Maybe
No,
he wants
I
to.
invited him to speak. I'm sorry I didn't see you in the crowd.
Okay, awesome.
If you want to say hi or anything, but
No, hi guys. Yeah, I just want to add that it's been really exciting to work with everybody in the analytics and everyone, and I think it's shaping up to be a really nice design, and yeah, look forward to great things.
sweet. Okay, with that, we're hitting the 30-minute mark. I don't have anything else on the agenda. So unless anybody has any last words, I think we can call it for today. But in the meantime, yeah.
Just the last thing. Yeah, just the last thing I would say is I know today was probably a little more processy in updates, but really it's cranking out all of the code and awesome tech that's going to go into V2, and it's really coming along nicely. So super excited for what's coming.
Yeah, I'll actually have one request for the community and basically everyone on the team, which is raising some awareness whenever it's possible that Tokemak is targeting, so this new category of liquidity aggregation, but we really insert ourselves within this growing LSDeFi category of DeFi, right? So simple things like, for example, just linking our pin thread to tweets that are related, for example, analysis from Delphi, Messari, etc. That's always useful, and just spreading the word out there that we are building this awesome project. That would be definitely helpful. So yeah, just that call to action.
I'd also add that we've opened up the Toka forums. You'll see it in the channel list. And that's intended to just be a space for anyone that is creating any kind of content about Tokemak and V2. They have a place there that they can ask questions, get assistance directly from the team, and get any feedback on content they're working on. So everyone should be able to go there and create a post if they'd like to. And you could also use it if you want to start a discussion about anything that you think deserves a dedicated forum post. So I just wanted to add that in for anyone that's working on some stuff.
Sweet. Thank you, Sharp. Thank you, Dan. Thanks to everybody that showed up on this summer Friday afternoon or morning or evening, wherever you are. We're going to post that link to the spaces on Sunday, so be sure to be on the lookout for that and join us on Sunday because, what else are you doing on Sunday? You might as well listen to a cool DeFi spaces with your favorite Tokemaks. So, yep, that's it. All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, all.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.